The Girl Who Waited for the Rain. Part 1. There are people who leave loud memories behind them. They are the ones everyone notices the moment they walk into a room. Then there are people like Lily. She never tried to stand out, yet somehow she became impossible to forget. Even now, whenever rain taps gently against my window, I think of her. I remember the way she smiled at grey skies, the way she believed every rainy day carried a story, and the way she unknowingly became the brightest part of my life. My name is Ryan, and if you ask me where our story began, I'll tell you it started on a rainy Monday, long before either of us knew we were falling in love. When my father accepted a new job, we moved to Maplewood just a month before my second year of college. Leaving my old city wasn't easy. My friends had become family, and suddenly I was starting out in a place where every face was unfamiliar. The campus was beautiful, with old brick buildings covered in ivy, quiet gardens, and a small lake behind the library. But none of that mattered to me. During those first days, I walked through the crowded hallways feeling invisible. Everyone already had their own friends, their own routines, their own inside jokes. I was simply the new student trying not to get in anyone's way. Every afternoon after class, I would sit beneath the giant oak tree near the library with my headphones on. Sometimes music played, sometimes I forgot to press play and simply watched students laughing together. I wasn't jealous, I just missed belonging somewhere. One Monday afternoon, dark clouds rolled across the sky. The wind carried the smell of wet earth, and students hurried to leave before the rain began. Looks like another storm, someone complained while running past me. Within seconds, the campus became a blur of umbrellas and rushing footsteps. Then I noticed her. While everyone else was trying to escape the rain, one girl was walking towards it. She wore a cream colored sweater, light blue jeans, and white sneakers that would probably be soaked within minutes. A canvas tote bag hung from her shoulder, filled with books, and a tiny sunflower keychain swung gently with every step she took. She didn't look at her phone. She didn't seem worried about the weather. Instead, she tilted her face towards the cloud with the smallest smile, as if the rain was someone she had been waiting to meet. I don't know why I followed her. Maybe curiosity, maybe loneliness, or maybe some stories simply know when they are about to begin. She crossed the road beside the college and stopped beneath an old wooden bus stop facing an open field filled with tiny white flowers. The place looked forgotten by time. The bench had peeling paint, the roof cracked whenever the wind blew. Yet she looked at it like it was the most beautiful place in the world. The first raindrop fell, then another. Within minutes, the rain covered everything. Instead of hiding, she stepped away from the shelter and stretched out both hands, laughing softly as the raindrops landed on her palms. I stood several feet away beneath a tree, completely confused. Who smiles at the rain like that? She did. After a minute, she looked in my direction. For a second, our eyes met. I immediately looked away, embarrassed that I'd be staring. When I looked back, she was smiling, not in a mocking way, just kindly. She gave a tiny wave before walking away through the rain as if nothing unusual had happened. I never even learned her name. That evening, I couldn't stop thinking about her. The next morning, I arrived at college earlier than usual. I wasn't expecting to see her again, but somehow my eyes searched every hallway. Nothing, no cream sweater, no sunflower keychain, no mysterious girl. By lunchtime, I convinced myself I'd imagined how interesting she seemed. Then, while searching for a book in the library, I noticed someone standing on the opposite side of the shelf. A familiar sunflower keychain swayed gently. I froze. She pulled a novel from the shelf at the exact moment I reached for the same one. Oh, her hand stopped. You can take it. No, it's okay. You saw it first. She laughed softly. We were arguing over a book neither of us has read yet. I couldn't help smiling. I guess we are. She looked at the cover. The language of rain. Maybe it's a sign, she joked. You believe in signs? I believe life likes surprising people. There was something about the way she spoke. Every sentence sounded thoughtful without trying too hard. I'm Rian, I finally said. She smiled. Lily. Somehow her name felt exactly right. You transferred here recently, didn't you? She asked. I blinked. How do you know? You sit near the window in Professor Carter's class. You noticed? You always look outside whenever it starts raining. I laughed awkwardly. I didn't know anyone was paying attention. I noticed quiet people. You read it first, and then next week we meet here. You want to discuss the book? She smiled. I think books are better when someone else had read them too. Before I could answer, she carefully wrote something on a small piece of paper and handed it to me. Wednesday, 4 p.m. Library. Don't be late, she said with a grin before disappearing between the shelves. I looked down at the note in my hand and laughed quietly to myself. For the first time since moving to Maplewood, I actually found myself looking forward to tomorrow. Wednesday arrived much slower than I expected. I had never been the kind of person who counted the hours until meeting someone, yet I caught myself checking the clock during every lecture. Professor Carter was explaining poetry, but my attention kept drifting towards the rain clouds gathering outside the classroom window. Every few minutes, I unfolded a small piece of paper Lily had given me, read the words Wednesday, 4 p.m., library, smiled to myself, and slipped it back into my notebook before anyone noticed. When the final lecture ended, I walked to the library, almost 20 minutes early. Great, I muttered, laughing at myself. Now I looked desperate. To avoid standing around awkwardly, I wandered through the shelves, pretending to look for another novel. A few minutes later, I heard a familiar voice behind me. I was wondering if you'd be early. I turned around. Lily stood there wearing a light green sweater, her hair tied loosely, holding two paper cups. The tiny sunflower keychain was still hanging from her canvas bag, gently swaying as she walked. You noticed? She smiled. You look like someone who's been here for a while. Maybe 5 minutes. She raised an eyebrow. Ryan? Fine, 20 minutes. She laughed the same soft laugh that had caught my attention the first day it rained. I brought hot chocolate, she said, handing me one of the cups. You didn't have to. I know. Then why you did? She shrugged. Because books and hot chocolate belong together. We found two seats beside the large library window, where raindrops slowly rolled down the glass. The novel lay down, open between us. But instead of talking about the story immediately, we somehow ended up talking about everything else. What made you move here? Lily asked. My dad's job. Do you miss your old city? Every day, she nodded thoughtfully. I have lived in Maplewood my whole life. Lucky. She smiled gently. I used to think it was boring. And now? Now I think every place becomes special when the right person are in it. I looked away before she noticed the small smile that appeared on my face. For almost 2 hours we discussed the novel, argued over our favorite characters, laughed at the same scenes, and disagreed about the ending. She believed every story deserved hope. I insisted that bittersweet endings were more realistic. So you're telling me, she teased, that if you wrote a love story, you'd probably make everyone cry. I wouldn't. You absolutely would. What about you? She looked out the window where the rain had started feeling harder. I'd make people smile, even if the ending wasn't perfect. She smiled. I think imperfect endings can still be beautiful. I wasn't sure why those words stayed with me, but they did. By the time we left the library, the rain had become heavier. I reached into my backpack and pulled out an umbrella. You can use it, I offered. Lee looked at it, then back at the rain. I'll pass. You'd rather get soaked. She grinned. I'd rather enjoy the weather. You really are impossible. I have been told. I sighed dramatically before closing the umbrella again. What are you doing? She asked. If you're walking in the rain, I smiled. Then I guess I'm too. She stared at me for a second before laughing. You're going to regret this. I probably will. 5 minutes later, we were both completely drenched. My hair was dripping, my shoes made little squeaking sounds with every step, and my jacket felt twice as heavy. Lily couldn't stop laughing. I warned you. I should have listened. But you didn't. No? Why? I looked at her for a moment. Because you looked like you didn't want to walk alone. The laughter slowly faded from her face. She looked at me quietly before whispering, Thank you. Neither of us spoke for the rest of the walk. Some silences don't feel awkward, some are simply too full of feelings to interrupt. From that day on, Wednesday quietly becomes a tradition. Every Wednesday after class, we met in the library, exchanged books, and spent hours talking about stories, dreams, and the strange little things that made us happy. Sometimes we wandered into the tiny bookstore near the town square, where the elderly owner had started greeting us with, My favorite readers are back. Other afternoons, we stopped by the cafe across the street, where the owner no longer asked what we wanted. Two hot chocolates? He would ask with a smile. Lily always answered before I could. Extra marshmallows. One afternoon, while we were studying, she suddenly reached across the table and stole one of the marshmallows floating in my cup. Hey, what? You just stole my marshmallow. She pretended to look innocent. I have no idea what you're talking about. Lily, what? You have marshmallow on your lip. Her eyes widened. I do? She quickly wiped her lips while I laughed. A second later, she realized I have tricked her. Ryan, she grabbed a napkin and lightly threw it at me. That wasn't funny. It was a little funny, actually. You have been spending too much time with me. Maybe, she smiled, maybe that's not such a bad thing. For a moment, neither of us looked away. Then she quietly picked up her books again, though I noticed the corners of her lips refusing to stop smiling. An autumn settled, our Maplewood, our friendship became something everyone around us noticed. You two are always together, one of our classmates teased. We're just friends, Lily answered with a laugh. Just friends, they repeated with knowing smiles. I laughed along with everyone else, but something about those two words echoed inside my heart long after the conversation ended. Just friends. Was that all we were? Or was I simply too afraid to hope for something more? That evening I walked home beneath another cloudy sky, the cool wind brushing against my face. I reached into my pocket and found the small note Lily had given me on the first day we met. I smiled. Somehow a girl who loved rainy days, old books, and hot chocolate had quietly become the happiest part of my week. And although I still hadn't admitted it, not even to myself, I was beginning to realize that my heart had started waiting for Wednesdays because Wednesdays meant Lily. Part 3, or you can say final part. Winter arrived quietly, wrapping Maplewood in cold mornings, misty afternoons, and evenings that always seemed to end too soon. The trees around the college stood bare. The little lake behind the library reflected silver skulls, and the cafe windows fudged up from the warmth inside. Final exams were only a few weeks away, and everyone seemed busy planning internship, graduation, and life after college. For the first time since moving to Maplewood, I wasn't worried about any of it. There was only one thought that kept returning into my mind. What if graduation took Lily away from me? The thought stayed with me everywhere I went. During lectures, I'd find myself glancing at the empty seat beside mine whenever she was a few minutes late. During lunch, I'd wonder how quiet the campus would feel without her laughter. Every rainy afternoons didn't feel quite the same anymore because they reminded me that time was moving faster than I wanted. One Wednesday, Lily didn't come to the library. At first, I wasn't worried. Maybe she had another class or was running late. I waited 10 minutes, then 20, then an hour. I checked my phone more times than I could count, but there were no messages. As I was about to leave, my phone finally buzzed. Lily, I'm sorry, my grandmother wasn't feeling well, so I had to take her to the doctor. I couldn't text earlier. I let out a long breath I didn't realize I had been holding. Ryan, is she okay? A minute later, she replied, Lily, she's better now. Thank you for asking. Then another message appeared. Lily, can we meet tomorrow? Or bus stop? I smiled before typing back, Ryan, I'll be there. The next afternoon, the sky was covered with soft grey clouds. A light drizzle had already begun by the time I reached the old wooden bus stop. The field beside it looked peaceful, tiny drops of rain resting on the wildflowers that had somehow survived the cold. Lily was already there. She was holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. I figured you'd forget to bring one, she said with a smile. I was too busy thinking. Thinking about what? I accepted the cup and looked out at the rain. About how strange life is. She leaned against the wooden railing beside me. Tell me, a few months ago I hated rainy days. I remember. Now they're my favorite. She looked at me longingly. Because of me? I laughed softly. Maybe? She bumped my shoulder. I knew it. We stood together watching cars passing by slowly along the wet road. After a while, Lily spoke again. Do you know why I love the rain so much? I have wondered since the day we met. She smiled at the falling rain before answering. When I was little, my grandfather used to take me on walks every time it rained. Everyone else stayed indoors, so the whole town became quiet. He would tell me that rain wasn't meant to make people sad, it was meant to remind them to slow down and notice the little things. She looked at the tiny flowers growing beside the road. He passed away when I was 12. I'm sorry. It's okay, she smiled gently. Whenever it rains, I feel like he's walking beside me again. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, without thinking, I reached over and gently held her hand. This time, she didn't seem surprised. Instead, she smiled and intertwined her fingers with mine. Her hands was cold from the winter air, but somehow it felt like the warmest thing I'd ever held. I've wanted to do that for a long time, I admitted. I know. You knew? She laughed quietly. Ryan, you're a terrible liar. I wasn't lying. You were hiding. I looked down, embarrassed. I was scared. Of what? That I'd lose you. She stopped walking and leaned towards me. You could never lose me because of honesty. The rain continued falling softly around us. My heart was beating so loudly I was sure she could hear it. Lily, she looked into my eyes. I don't know what happens after graduation. Neither do I. I don't know where we'll end up. Me neither. But I do know one thing. I took a slow breath. The happiest moments I have had since moving here have all included you. She smiled through her eyes were already beginning to fill with tears. You made this town feel like home. You made ordinary Wednesdays become my favorite day of the week. You made rainy afternoons something I looked forward to. And somewhere between library books, hot chocolates, and long walks, I fall in love with you. The words finally escaped. I love you, Lily. For a heartbeat, the whole world felt silent. Then she laughed through happy tears. I was wondering how much longer you'd keep me waiting. I blinked. What? She reached into her bag and carefully pulled out a folded envelope. I wrote this almost 2 months ago. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Dear Ryan, if you're reading this, then you finally found the courage to tell me how you feel. I think I started falling in love with you on that rainy afternoon when you closed your umbrella just because I didn't want to walk alone. No one had ever chosen discomfort simply so I wouldn't feel alone. Since then, every Wednesday has become my favorite day. Every book reminds me of you, and every cup of hot chocolate somehow tastes better when you're sitting across from me. I don't know if you're sitting across from me. I don't know what our future looks like, but I know I'd like to discover it with you. So, if you're asking whether I love you too, the answer has always been yes, Lily. By the time I finished reading, I couldn't stop smiling. So, she asked shyly, so, is there a yes to being my boyfriend? I laughed. I think you just stole my question. I got impatient. You usually do, she grinned. And you usually take forever. We both laughed until tears filled our eyes. Then, without another word, I gently wrapped my arms around her. She hugged me back, resting her head against my shoulder while the rain continued falling around us. It wasn't a dramatic movie moment, no grand music, no cheering crowd, just two college students standing beneath an old wooden bus stop surrounded by the soft sound of rain. And somehow, it was perfect. A few months later, graduation arrived. Students hugged each other, cameras flashed everywhere, and promises to stay in touch filled the campus. As I stood holding my graduation certificate, I felt someone slip their hand into mine. I didn't even have to look. I knew that hand anywhere. Lily smiled. We did it. We did. So, what happens now? I looked at the girl who had turned a lonely new beginning into the happiest chapter of my life. Now we keep making memories. Books? Definitely. Hot chocolate? Always. She smiled. And rainy Wednesdays? Yes, definitely rainy Wednesdays. Years later, people would ask us how we met. Some expected an exciting story, others imagined love at first sight. We would simply smile at each other before giving the same answer. It started with the rain, because love isn't always loud. Sometimes it grows quietly between shared books, warm cups of hot chocolate, gentle laughter, and the courage to finally say the words your heart has been whispering all along. And every time it rained, Ryan and Lily would still slow down for a moment, look at each other, and smile, grateful that one rainy Monday had changed two ordinary lives forever. And this is the end of this story. Stay tuned for more.